Hello, my name is Conloyd Gums. We'll be looking at the General Mathematics Paper 1, May 2018 paper. Alright, so let's look at number 1. So number 1, 3.14063. So we have to write this correct to 3 decimal places. So if we are writing this to 3 decimal places, we need to figure out where are the decimal places. So the decimal places are the numbers to the right of the decimal point. So right here is the decimal point. We have these numbers on the right of it. So this is 1 decimal place, 2, 3 decimal places, 4, 5. What we want is for 3 decimal places. 3 decimal places. So we want to have this one, and up to this particular value here. Now the thing is, we need to look at this value and see if it needs to change. Now in order to know if it's going to change or not, we need to examine our value right here. So as you can see, once this value is more than or equal to 5, we would upgrade this here to 1. If this here is greater or equal to 5, we will round up this value. If it's not, meaning that it's less than 5, we will keep this value. Now in this case, 6 is more than or equal to 5, so obviously since 6 is higher than 5, we will have to change this value here to 1. So this to 3 decimal places would be 3.141. Therefore, our answer would be B. Number 2, what percentage of 40 is 8? So we are trying to examine the number 40 and find out what percentage of this 40 is the value 8. Therefore, we would have to write it like a fraction first, where 8 would be over 40, and then now we can multiply to what a percentage usually is. A percentage represents 100. Percent means per century or per 100. Okay, so per 100, 5% means 5 per 100, right? So now that's why we have to multiply it by 100 to figure that out. So in this case, we see that 10 could go into 40 4 times. So it's like me crossing out this 0. And 10 can go into 100 10 times. So I'm left here with 8 times 10 over 4. But this 4 here now that we have can go into another number at the top, which is the 8. So 4 into 4 goes once, 4 into 8 goes twice. So now we are left with 2 times 10, which is 20, over 1 times 1, which is 1. So 20 divided by 1 is 20%. So our answer here is 20%. So 8 represents 20% of 40. So this here is telling us to use the distributive property to represent this that we see here. Now with a distributive property, it's usually written like this. So A, open brackets, B plus C. Now what this means is that we can multiply A times B as well as A times C, which is the same as having A times B, which is A times B or AB, and then we'll have plus A times C, so plus A times C. So we are saying with a distributive property that this is equivalent to this. Now this question that we have is in the form of this here, okay? So if I was to represent this like that, I can replace this A with the 49 times the 17 plus the 49 times the 3. So think of it like this. If we was to reverse it back to this, what's the common value or the common factor we would say? The common factor is 49. Both of them have 49. So we can pull the 49 outside, open brackets, 17 from this side, because if we were to say we got rid of this 49, we would have 17 plus what's left here? 3. So 17 plus 3, close brackets. So this here is the same as this here, right? So you could have either used this to compare it, or you could have just factorized it. Now what does 49 brackets 17 plus 3 means? What this means is that we are multiplying 49 to whatever these here would give us. So 17 plus 3 is 20. So that's the same thing as saying 49 times 20. So our answer is A. Alright, for number 4, that is here. So from 1 to 6, how would I have gotten from 1 to 6? So 1 to 6, I would have probably added 5, right? Because 1 plus 5 is 6. Now to get from 6 to 13, how did I get from 6 to 13? So if I'm following the same procedure, I would have to say 13 take away 6, which is equal to 7. So that means I had to add 7 to the 6 to get 13. Now notice what's going on here. It says 1 plus 5 is 6. 6 plus 7 is 13. Now 13 plus what would give me 22? So I need to figure out what's the space here. So 22 take away 13 is equal to 9. So that means I had to add 9 here. Now we could kind of see where this is going. So I suspect that if we are adding 5, then 7, then 9, notice what's happening. We are jumping in 2s, but not jumping in just 2s. We are starting from 5, then jumping in 2s. So we have 5, then we have 7, then we have 9. So I'll assume that the next one is gonna be plus 11. Let's see if we are correct. So to get between 22 to 33, that would be 33 minus 22, which is 11. So I was correct. So if that was 22 to 33 and we were going 1 plus 5 is 6, 6 plus 7 is 13, 13 plus 9 is 22, 22 plus 11 is 33, that must mean now that we are adding what? We have to add 13 now. So 33 plus 13 would give us 3 plus 3 is 6, 3 plus 1 is 4. So that means that this here is going to be 46. All right, so next question, number 5. So we have 0.45 written as a common fraction in its simplest form is, so if I need to write 0.45 as a fraction, what I can do is write this as 45 over 100. How do I know that? I just need to know how many digits I have behind the decimal place, which would be 1, 2, and then I write it over a number where I put the first number as 1 and then after the remaining digits as zeros. Now these zeros match with the number of digits that we have here. So notice how I have 1, 2, and with the zeros I have 1, 2 zeros. Okay, so 45 over 100. Now the thing is, that is not here, so I need to figure out how can I get from 45 over 100 to one of these fractions here. Now in order to do that, I need to try to reduce this in its lowest form. So a number that I can think of that can both go into 45 and 100 is 5. Now 5 can go into 45 9 times, and 5 can go into 100 20 times. So my answer for this would just be 9 over 20. There are no other numbers that can go into 9 and 20. So my answer is A. Ratios. This is one of the questions that shake most people and get most people frightened, right? But we got this. We got this. So it says here we have a certain amount of money that is shared in the ratio 2, 3, 9. It says if the difference between the first and second shares is 40, then the amount of money shared is, all right, so the ratio would go like this: 2, 3, 9. So that means if we had a person, the first person would be getting 2 out of this total. So the total of this would be 2 plus 3 plus 9, which is 2 plus 3 plus 9, which is 14. So that means this first person would get 2 out of 14, the second person would get 3 out of the 14, and the next person would get 9 out of the 14. What they want here is the first and second shares. So the first share would be 2, the second share is 3. So we are saying that the difference between those shares would give us $40. So let's try to put it as a fraction. So the second share, first share would be 2 out of 14, and this would be 3 out of 14. Okay, so basically whatever fraction is the difference of this should be the same thing as saying $40 out of the total. So what we mean by that is 3 over 14 minus 2 over 14. This is equal to 1 over 14 because we have the same denominator, and once we have the same denominator, once we subtract these top numerators, we would end up with 1 over 14. Now what do I mean by that? So this 1 over 14, I'm saying that this 1 over 14 is $40. If 1 over 14 represents $40, I now need to figure out how many $40 can we get if we had 14 on 14, if we had the full proportion. So in order to do that, all I need to do is say 40 times 14. So 4 times 0 is 0. 4 times 4 is 16. So then we put a 0 here. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 4 is 4. So now we have to add up these values here now. So 0 plus 0 is 0. 6 plus 0 is 6. 1 plus 4 is 5. So then we have $560 was shared in total. So therefore our answer is this. All right, so number 7, which of the following sets is equivalent to A, B, C, and D? So when we are talking about equivalent, we are talking about not having the same values, which would have been their equal in that sense, but having the same number of elements. So this has 4 elements, 1, 2, 3, 4. We need to figure out which one of these also have 4 elements. So if you look below, it's not this. This has 3. This one here has 4. So our answer is C. All right, so for this particular one, we want to figure out the shaded region. What does a shaded region represent? If you look at the shaded region, everything outside of P is shaded. Everything outside of P is shaded. Once we have something like that, we call it complement. So this shaded region is known as P complement. And how is that represented? By P apostrophe. All right, so our answer is P complement, which you would see here as P apostrophe. The number of students in each set is shown. How many students do not play volleyball? So anybody who plays volleyball would be inside of this circle here. Okay, so if you look inside this circle, this would represent the number of people that play volleyball. So we have 2 and 4. So 4 plus 2 is 6. So 6 people play volleyball. We do not want these people. We're looking for the people that do not play volleyball. So when we get rid of that, what's left? We have 5 as well as 3. What this means is that these 5 people play hockey only. Okay, they play hockey only. And these people here, they do not play any of the sports. So if they play none of the sports, that means they don't play volleyball. And if these 5 people only play hockey, that means they do not play volleyball as well. Therefore, our answer to this would be 5 plus the 3, which is 8. So therefore, our answer is this. All right, so for this question, number 10, it says, if Q is equal to A, B, and C, how many subsets can be obtained from the set Q? So there's a general formula for this. To determine the number of subsets, we always use 2 to the power of n. What does n represent? N represents the number of elements inside of the set. So in this case, we have 1, 2, 3 elements. So therefore, that would be 2 to the power of 3. Which would be this here. Now, just to show you how it works, 2 to the power of 3 is the same as what? 2 times 2 times 2, which is 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8. Now, as it relates to this, we have A, B, C, and what a subset would be a smaller set that has any of these elements in it. Okay, if it does not have an element that's here, it's considered not a subset of. Okay, so once we have a subset, it must have some of these in here. Once we have a subset, we expect that it should include this here. So basically, it would be considered not a subset if an element is not in there. So the first subset we could have A. Second one we could have is B. Third one we could have is C. Now I could also have A and B. What else you think we could have? We could have B and C. We could also have A and C, and we could also have A, B, and C. Now, the only one that we have left, which is also considered a subset, which is kind of weird, but yes, that's also a subset. The empty set. The empty set is considered to be a subset of this just because we cannot say it's not a subset of this. In order for it to not be a subset, it must have an element in here that's not in here. So for instance, if it didn't have R is an element, and R is not in here. So then in that case, that would have not been a subset, but in this case, just because it's empty, we have to consider this as part of a subset. So an empty set is a subset of all sets. All right, so number 11, which of the following sets is empty? Talking about empty sets. So we are saying prime numbers intersecting R, which would be even numbers. Now, when we are talking about intersections, we are talking about what's common. So just in case you forgot what prime numbers are, prime numbers would be numbers such as 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17. So these numbers are basically numbers that can only be divided equally by itself and 1. Now, do we have any even numbers that are prime numbers? Yes, we do. If you look here, we can see 2. So that's what's common. So that means that P intersection R does have something in common, which is 2. Now, the next one says that P union Q. So it's saying that we want all the elements of P as well as all the elements of Q. Now clearly, if we have something where we're saying union, we will have something in that set. So if, for instance, just using these numbers we're using all the prime numbers here, as well as if we had to list out the odd numbers, we would have all of those as well. So because of that, this is definitely not an empty set. Now the next one is P intersection Q. So what is common between the odd numbers and the prime numbers? And as you can tell here, we have several odd numbers. So all of these here are odd numbers. So therefore, this set has something in it. Now the last one, it says odd numbers and even numbers. So some of the odd numbers we have would be 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and so forth. And the even numbers would be the ones that are in between. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and so forth. Now the problem is that obviously these would never intersect. Okay, odd numbers are not even numbers. They are two separate situations. Okay, they are what we call mutually exclusive. Therefore, this set would be empty. So we know that our answer for this is this. All right, so for this one now, it says if P and Q are two sets where N, P union Q is 13, so all this fancy N means here is the number of elements. So number of elements in. So in this case, it means the number of elements in P union Q, meaning what is it in P as well as Q is 13. It says here the number of elements P intersection Q is 6, and the number of elements of P would be equal to 9. So we are trying to figure out what NQ would be. Now there's a general formula for this here. So the general formula is NP union Q is equal to NP plus NQ minus NP intersection Q. Now this value NP union Q would actually be 13 based off of this, which is equal to the number of elements in P, which would be 9, plus this, we don't know what this is, minus the intersection, which is 6. So if I was to simplify this, I would have 13, which is equal to 9 plus something, take away 6. So since I don't know what this is, I could just say 9 take away 6 right now is 3. So then two of these here would come together, to give me 3. So 3 plus something gives me 13, which is what? 10. So that means that this Q here is 10. So if we back check it, it would be 13 up here, 9 here, 10 here, minus 6. And 9 plus 10 is 19. Take away 6 is 13. Now, just to put this into perspective as to what this actually is, we could have used a visual representation to help us work this out. So if I put this like that, what I'm saying here is that we have inside of this here the number 6. Now how did I know that? It says the intersection, the number of elements of the intersection would be 6. Now what it's saying that we have for P, so P in itself represents 9. So not just the P here, but the entire P. So we're not just talking about inside this blank spot, we're talking about the entire P. So if the entire P is 9, that must mean that inside of here is 9 minus 6, which is equal to 3. So inside of here would be 3. Now we need to figure out what this is, but look what this says to us. It says here that this entire thing, meaning the whole total here, so this as well as this, all these values here should add up to 13. Okay, so we have here 3 plus 6, which is what? 3 plus 6 is 9. We need to figure out what this value here is to get to 13. So if we have 9 and we need to get to 13, 13 take away 9 would be equal to 4. Therefore, the value in here would be 4. Okay, so we have this now, and now we need to do the values just in Q. So if here is Q, here was P, the value inside of here would be 6 plus 4. So what's 6 plus 4? 6 plus 4 is equal to 10. So whichever way helps you to understand this, you can use whichever way. I think the formula is a nice way if you can remember it. But just in case you can't remember it, you could try to do this, because technically in your head, when you try to work these out, you can get the values using this concept, but you just need to be careful when it comes to these particular ones, right? So draw them out to see what they look like and make sure they backcheck with make sure they clear with what you have here in the answers presented to you, or rather the elements presented to you. So answer for this one is this. A man's taxable income is $20,000. A man's taxable income is $20,000. He pays tax at the rate of 28%. So the amount of income tax he pays is, so this question is saying some man, he gets $20,000. So he pays tax at the rate of 28%. So the amount of income tax, meaning this tax that he's paying, 28% of income tax, is what we need to figure out. So in order to figure out that, we need to write it as a fraction. So then we have 28 over 100 multiplied to 20,000 over 1. So when we look at this here, 100 could go into itself once. And if I was to think of crossing out 2 zeros here, I'll be left with 200. So therefore, this would be the same as saying 28 times 200, which is 200 times 28. Now 200 times 28. So 8 times 0 is 0. 8 times 0 again is 0. 8 times 2 is 16. So we put the placeholder here for 0. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 0 again is 0. 2 times 4, 2 times 2, sorry, is 4. So therefore, we would have 0065. So our answer is 5,600. So this is how much he pays in tax. Alright, so for number 14, it says a man's basic wage for a 40-hour week is $160. So he makes $160 per week for 40 hours. He is paid $5 per hour for overtime. So when he does overtime, he gets an extra $5 every hour. If he works 6.5 hours overtime in a certain week, his wage for the week is, so he works 6 hours overtime. We already know that he had to work 40 hours. Overtime would be the time after this 40 hours. So in total, he actually worked for 46.5 hours. Now this 6.5 is the extra. The 6.5 is the extra hours he worked. Now, I need to figure out what is 6.5 hours gonna give him if it's $5 per hour. So we already know the whole number. So he worked for 6 hours. What would be for 6 hours? Every hour he makes 5. So that's gonna be 6 times 5, which is 30. So $30. And then after he makes half. So now for the next part, the half that he makes, that's just for half an hour. So he did not work for a full hour. So what is half of $5? Half of $5 would be $2.50. So he's gonna make 30 plus $2.50 in overtime, which is 32.50. So if he made 32.50 in overtime and he made 160 per week, he's gonna make in total 160 plus 32.50. So that's gonna be 192.50. So he made $192. So for this particular question, it says if TT dollars is $6 is equivalent to $1. So $1 is equal to $6 TT. We want to figure out what $15 would be. So we have $1 that's US, which is equal to 6 TT dollars. So if we're going from US to TT, we would have to multiply. And if we're going from TT to US, we have to divide. Now we know that this here is $15 TT. So we need to figure out now what is the equivalent in US. So since we're converting from TT to US, we have to divide. So what are we gonna divide? We're gonna divide 15 by 6. So that's gonna be 15 over 6. So if I'm in a multiple choice question, I would always try to do it like a fraction first, just to see if that helps me. So for instance, in this case, if I was to convert this to a proper fraction, 15, well rather a mixed number, 15 divided by 6 goes how many times? Twice. Because 6 times 2 is 12. So the remainder would be 3 over 6. Now 3 over 6 can be reduced to what? Can reduce to a half. So then I'll have 2.5. So 2.5 is the same as $2.50 because 2.5 is the same as 2.5. But for money purposes, we use 2 decimal places. Therefore, our answer would be $2.50. Alright, so the next question says the annual interest rate on a 15-year mortgage on a house assessed at a value of $450,000 is 5 cents on every dollar. What is the interest rate? What is the interest paid on the mortgage for the first year? So the annual interest rate on a 15-year mortgage on a house assessed at a value of $450,000 is 5 cents per every dollar. So we know that we have to pay 5 cents for every single dollar. Now, if we was to write that as a fraction, 5 cents over what would give us $1. So a dollar has how many cents? A dollar has 100 cents. So if I'm trying to get 5 cents in relation to what it would be in dollars, that would be the same thing as saying 5 over 100, because this is 5 cents over 100 cents, which is $1. Now I have $450,000. So because I have $450,000, for each dollar in this 450,000, I have to spend 5 cents. So every single dollar I have to spend 5 cents on. So that means I just need to multiply this by 450,000. Alright, so I can say that 100 can go into itself once, and 100 can go into this how many times? All I need to do is get rid of the zeros, these 2 zeros. I got rid of 2 here, get rid of 2 here. So I'm left now with 5 times 4,500. Which is going to be this. So 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 0 again is 0. 5 times 5 is 25. Cross out the 5. Put the 5 here. Put the 2 here. This 2 here goes over here. 4 times 5 is 20. Plus 2 is 22. So I have to pay $22,500 every single year. Okay? And they wanted us to figure out just for the first year, so they just wanted to know for 1 year. Therefore, our answer is this. If they wanted to know for 2 years, we would have doubled this, 3 years, triple it, and so forth. So this question here says that Mary invested $200 for 5 years at 5% per annum. Okay, so 200 for 5 years at 5% per annum. So it says here, Mary invested $200 for 5 years at 5% per annum. Now, John now invested $500 at the same rate. So he did the same rate. So what is the same rate? The rate is talking about percentage. So this is what we're talking about, 5%. Okay, so John's interest or his rate would be 5% per annum. If they both receive the same amount of money in simple interest, for how many years did John invest his money? Now, first things first, we need to figure out how much simple interest did Mary get. Then if we could figure out how much simple interest she got, we need to figure out what was the value that John had to pay for his first year. Then once we could figure that out, we know how long it's going to take him to get what she got. So let's start off with Mary. So with Mary, they said that she invested $200 for 5 years at 5% per annum. Per annum means per year. That's a fancy way to say per year, right? So if we have 5% of $200, that would be written as 5 over 100 times 200. So 100 could go in itself once, 100 could go into 200 twice. So 5 times 2 is $10. So she would have $10 per year. And how long did she do it for? She did this for 5 years. So if she did this for 5 years, that must mean that she had $10 times 5, which would be equal to $50. So she received $50 in simple interest. So the question is, what about John? So John invested $500 and he got this same $50. So we need to figure out, what did John pay or get paid per year? So that would be 5% because he got the same rate. So 5 over 100 times 500 over 1. So 100 could go in itself once. 100 could go into 500 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25. 1 times 1 is 1. So therefore, he had $25 per year. Now, if he got $25 per year and he received the same simple interest as Mary, that must mean that he had to have $50 in simple interest as well. So how can we figure out how much years it took him? That's simple, just 50 divided by 25, which gives us 2 years. Okay, so we had 2 years that he was able to get this $50. All right, so we say a salesman sells a car for $11,000. If he is paid a commission of 4.5% for the first 10,000 and 7.5% on the remainder, then the commission he receives is. So first of all, when I'm looking at this question, I'm not trying to do everything at once. I'm breaking this down. So it says that we have $11,000 for a car. If he is paid a commission of 4.5% for the first 10,000, what does that mean? First 10,000. So we're not talking about the full 11,000. We're talking about the first 10,000. So what we need to do is split this. So we have 10,000 and we are finding how much percent of that? 4.5%. Okay, that's the first 10,000. And they say the remainder. So what is the remainder? So the remainder after we but find the commission would be 11,000 take away 10,000, which is 1,000. So 1,000 we would end up with finding 7.5% of that. Now looking at this here, I need to find 4.5% of the 10,000. Remember we said the first $10,000. So that would be 10,000 over 1 times 4.5 over 100. So 100 could go into itself once, and 100 could go into this how many times? 100 times. I'm canceling out the zeros on top as well. It kind of gave us some nice values here for these percentage questions so far. So we have 100 times 4.5, okay? And the same thing as multiplying by 100 would mean that we're literally going to move the decimal point number of zeros we have. So we have 4.5, so we move it twice. 1, 2, So the decimal would be right here, and we will put a placeholder for this. So in essence, 100 times 4.5 is $450. Likewise, we do the same over here. So we'd have 1,000 over 1 times 7.5 over 100. So we already figured out how much we're going to get, or how much he's going to get from the first 10,000. So 100 could go into itself once, and it could go into this here, cross out the 2 zeros, basically left with 10. All right, so 10 here, and we have to multiply that to the 7.5. So 10 times 7.5, we move the decimal place. In this case, we have 1 0, and we say we go to the right, which is going to be 75 or 75. So then altogether, we have $75 that we have to add to 450. So the total commission is going to be 450 plus the 75. So 5 plus 0 is 5. 7 plus 5 is what? 12. We cross out the 2, put the 2 here, put the 1 here. So 4 plus 1 is 5. We're talking a commission of $525. So that's our answer to that question. Alright, so we have a television set that costs $350 cash. So this is my poor attempt at trying to draw a television. So let's just say that this TV is $350 if we pay it in cash. A nice flat screen TV. I don't know if you would buy this, but $350 would be for this one. It has a broken leg. But we said that when bought on hire purchase, a deposit of $35 is required. So we have to pay down $35 plus 12 monthly payments of $30. So with this here, we need to figure out what is the hire purchase. This is in cash, but if we have to pay in hire purchase, maybe we can't afford it. So we have a deposit first. So in the deposit is going to be $35. So basically that's like 10% of this. And now I have to figure out how much I would have to pay for the 12 months if I pay 30 every month. So 30 every month for 12 months would be the same as 30 times 12. So 30 times 12 would be 2 times 0 is 0. 3 times 2 is 6. So 1 times 0, we would have to put this here, the placeholder. So we have 1 times 0 is 0. And then 1 times 3 is 3. So now when we add this together, we'll have $360. So now the final part for the hire purchase would be the $360 plus the $35. So $360 plus $35 is $395. So if he has to pay $395 for hire purchase, and then with cash it would have been $350, the savings would have been $395 minus $350. So then we have 5 take away 0 is 5, 9 take away 5 is 4. So our answer is $45. So now Mr. Jones bought a car for $64,000. That's quite a bit of money for his car, and the car depreciates by 20% in the first year and 10% each year after that. So that means that the depreciation is going to change by the next year. So let's just figure out what it would be at the end of the first year. So at the end of the first year, it would be 20% of 64,000. So that's 20 over 100. So 100 goes into itself once, 100 goes into this one here 640 times. So then now we could multiply 640 times 20. So it's going to be 0 times 0 is 0, 4 times 0, 0, 6 times 0, 0. We bring the 0 for place value. So 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 6 is 12. So when we add this together, we'll have 12,800. So at the end of the first year, the value of the car would be 64,000 subtract 12,800. When we subtract this, we'll get $51,200. So that's a value at the end of the first year. Now the second year, what would be the value at the end of the second year? So for the second year, the decrease is going to be 10% of the current value. So our current value is now 51,000. So we multiply this by 10%. 100 into itself goes once, and 100 into this goes 512 times. So then we have 512 times 10, which is 0 times 0 times 0. 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 5 is 5. So then once we add this, we know that it's 5,120. So now we just need to subtract that from this. So it's going to be, so we get the 2. So here would be 8. 1 take away 1 is 0. We 4. So bring over the 1, 5. 11 take away 5 is 6. Bring the 4. $46,080, which would be this. Alright, so question 21. So we have some fractions here. We want to add these together. 1 over 5x plus 2 over 3x. Now the thing is, let me make this 2 look a little better. So now the thing is with this, we know that generally in fractions, we cannot add them together if they have different denominators. But as you can see here, we have different denominators here, but the only thing that's common between these two would be the x's. So if I had to, do LCM and that kind of stuff, I know that the x is common because here it is and here it is. But for now, let's just get rid of these x's since we know that they're the same. It would have been different if I had x squared here and x here. But because both of them are x, we know they are common. So now I'm just looking at it as 1 over 5 plus 2 over 3. So if we had to think of that as a fraction, usually we would do fractions 1 over 5 plus 2 over 3. We find the LCM and then we walk from there. So the LCM of 5 and 3 would be what? So just in case you forgot what LCM is, so we're just like adding this 3 multiple times. So 3, we have 6. After 6, we would have 9. We would have 12. We would have 15. We would have 18. And so forth. For this one, we'd have 5, we would have 10, 15, 20, and so forth. The lowest common multiple that we have here would be 15. So the LCM here is 15. So 5 into 15 goes 3 times. So then 3 times 1. Then 3 into 15 goes 5 times, which is 5 times 2. So 3 times 1 is 3 plus 5 times 2, which is 10. So if I was to simplify this, I would end up with 3 plus 10 is 13 over 15. And I can't forget what we have hidden, that x. So if we bring back everybody on stream who's the x, have our final answer 13 over 15x. So this is our answer. Now for question 22, it says if 5 times 2x minus 1 is equal to 35, what is x? So if I have 5 times 2x minus 1 equal 35. So what I'm going to do with this is multiply 5 to each of these. So 5 times 2x, which is going to give me 10x, and then the next thing is 5 times minus 1, which gives me minus 5. So this here is distribution law. So that's when we multiply this and that. We did that kind of in the third question, I believe. So this is equal to 35. Now we need to find what x is. So we need to get x by itself and make x the subject of the formula. So think of it as, to get rid of this minus 5, I do what's the opposite of what's being done here. So the opposite of minus and 5 would be to add it. Why I did that is because when I add these, they'll cancel out. Same thing here. I have to keep both sides balanced. So I have to add 5 here. Now the thing is, you could kind of think of it as, if we was to bring the minus 5 over, it would give us a positive 5 because once it crosses the equal sign, it changes signs. However you know it, however you remember it, just do what works best for you. So therefore 10x would be equal to 35 plus 5. And what's 35 plus 5? That's equal to 40. So 10x is equal to 40. Now we have to divide, which is the opposite of what this 10 is doing. This 10 is multiplying to the x. So we do the opposite, divide both sides by 10. So x is equal to what? 40 divided by 10. Therefore x is equal to 4. And that's our answer. So we look for 4 on this, which is right here. So that's our answer. All right, so number 23. Number 23 says 3x squared multiplied by 2x to the power of 3. We need to multiply this out and see what it is. Now the thing is, we can multiply the numbers. So 3 times 2 is what? 6. 3 times 2 is 6. Now we need to multiply x squared and multiply that to x to the power of 3. Now there's a rule. Once we are multiplying, the powers can be added together. So therefore x squared times x to the power of 3 is the same thing as adding these powers, which is x to the power of 5. Okay, now just in case you never saw this before and wonder how it works, look at this. X squared is the same as saying x times x and then saying multiplying it to what? X to the power of 3, which means x times x times x, or if you notice, x multiplied by x 3 times. So when we put all of these together, how many times do we see x being multiplied to itself? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So therefore, our answer is 6 x to the power of 5. Alright, so this says that given that 3 star 6 is 12, now this star does not mean that it's multiplied. It's just showing like a relationship. So it's saying that usually we would have like 3 star 6 equal whatever. We have this formula equation that you use to try and figure it out. So what we can do here, like you see how we have a star b, we would have a star b is equal to. Alright, so for number 24, it says that given that 3 star 6 equal 12, now this is not multiplied, okay? So don't think that this is multiplied. This is just showing a relationship. So if you look at this, for instance, it says a star b. So we are comparing this a star b. So this here is like saying a star b is equal to 12. And for this one, same thing, 2 star 5 equal 9. So we're saying that this here is 8 and this is star b. So usually this a star b is equal to a formula. So it's one of these formulas in here that's going to give us this output. Okay, so we need to figure out which one of these formulas would give us this output. So let's see if we could do one of these and see what we get. So the first one I'm going to try is 4 times b minus a. So using this here, I'm saying that a is equal to 3 and b is equal to 6. So let's try this formula, 4b minus a. So in this first instance, a is equal to 3 and b is equal to 6. So let's see if it works. So 4 is being multiplied by, what's b? 6 take away a, which is 3. So we have here 4 multiplied by 6 take away 3 is what? 3. So 4 times 3 is 12. Aha. So we got this 12, which is good. However, we need to try it for this next one here now. So for this next one, it says the same thing, b minus a. So in this case, a matches with the 2. So a is equal to 2. B is equal to 5. Let's see if this works. So then we'll have 4 here, open brackets, replace the b with 5. And we're going to subtract it from 2 because a is 2. So what's 5 minus 2? 5 minus 2 is 3. 4 times 3 is 12. But look what we have here, 9. So it works for this first one, but not the second one. So clearly that is not the answer. So we just proved that this is definitely not the answer. All right, so the next one we could try is, how about we try a squared minus b. So if you have a squared minus b, let's try it for this first. So a is 3, as we said earlier, and b is what? B is 6. So a squared, that's going to be 3 squared, and then we're going to be subtracting 6. So what 3 squared is? 9. 9 take away 6 is 3. Definitely not going to work. So we know that this is not the answer. I didn't even have to waste time trying it for the next one because it didn't work for the first one. Okay, so let's look at this one, 6a minus b. So 6a minus b, so this time we have 6 multiplied by a, which we already established is 3, take away 6. So 6 3s are 18, minus 6 is 12. Bam, so we got 12. Let's try it for the next one. So we know that in this case, a is equal to what? A is equal to 2 and b is equal to 5. So let's see if it works. So 6 times 2 minus 5. So 6 times 2 is 12. Minus 5 is 7, but this is a 9. So we know that this does not work. So that leaves us with the only option, which is this one here. But just to show you that it works, let's try it. So 2a plus b, we know what a is already. A is 3, b is 6. So 2 times a, which will be 2 times 3, plus b, which is 6. So 2 times 3 is 6, plus 6 is 12. Now the next one we have is 2a plus b for when a is equal to 2 and b is equal to 5. So 2a, so 2 times 2 plus 5. So 2 times 2 is 4 plus 5 is 9. So as you can see now we got our 9. So we know that this is definitely the answer. So now we say for 25, when a is subtracted from a certain number, and the result is multiplied by 3, the answer is 21. what is the original number? So now with questions like this, you could kind of like try to mess with these numbers and see if it works. So let's just try to use 10. I'm using 10 because it's more than 8. And if I'm subtracting, I want to see if it's going to be a positive number first. You know, I want to keep things positive and easy for me. So C is 10. Let's try it out and see. So 10 take away 8 is what? That's 2. The result is multiplied by 3. So 2 times 3 is equal to 6. Is the answer 21? Nope. So I know for sure that was not my answer. Okay, so if this is 10, let's try for 15. Now the reason I'm trying for 15 is because the number I got was small and I need a bigger number. So let's see, 15, which is gonna subtract 8, because it says when 8 is subtracted from a certain number. So 15 take away 8 is 7. So then the result is multiplied by 3. So 7 times 3 is 21. So I know my answer is this. Now, that is if you're in a desperate situation and you're not too sure how to work it out using algebra or whatever the case is, because as you can see, we're in the algebra section. Now, if you have a strong understanding of algebra, you know you're relatively okay in algebra, you can kind of try to set up a formula. So for instance, it says when a is subtracted from a certain number, so let's just call that number x. So x minus that certain number, and the result they say is multiplied by 3. So we are saying x minus 8, we have to multiply that answer to 3. So 3 times x minus 8, and that is equal to 21. So same distributive law. So 3 times x, okay, so 3 times x would be 3x, and then this 3 times minus 8 would be minus 24. Now notice this here is just multiply, okay? So don't think that that's an x. So 3 times minus 8 is going to give us minus 24, which is equal to 21. So now what I can do is, similar to what we did for one of those early algebra questions, we want to get x by itself. So we get rid of these things farthest from it first. So minus 24, the opposite of subtracting is adding. So we add to both sides. So then we'll end up with 3x is equal to 21 plus 24. What's 21 plus 24? That's going to be 45. Now we could divide both sides by 3, since it's the opposite of multiplying, as we see here, 3 times x. And 45 divided by 3 is 15. So our answer is 15. So this way is if we have a strong understanding of algebra, okay understanding of it. And this way is just, you know, us trying to figure it out because all the options are already there. So you can use the process of elimination to help you, or you can use a more structured approach. So just remember too, our answer for this one was this one. So this question says we have some values of x, y, and t. We want to figure out what is x over y multiplied or to the power rather of t. So if x is equal to negative 2, y is equal to 3, t is equal to 2, we can do some substitutions. So we could say, for instance, in this case, that we have negative 2. So I'm replacing this x with negative 2 over y is equal to 3. And that goes to the power of what? T, which is 2. So what does this mean? This means negative 2 over 3 multiplied by itself. So in other words, negative 2 over 3 multiplied by negative 2 over 3. Now, negative 2 times negative 2 would give me positive 4, because a negative times a negative is a positive. Then I'll have 3 times 3, which is 9. So then my final answer would be 4 over 9. So be careful with the negative signs and positive signs. Notice what we had here. It would have been easier for you to end up selecting this, which would have been the wrong answer. So you got to be careful with that. All right, so it says here, what is the order of matrix Q? So matrix Q, when we're talking about order, we're talking about rows by columns. So rows, remember rows run left to right and columns run up and down, okay? So that's columns. So the question is, R, what is that? C, what is that? This number of rows by the number of columns. So what do we have for the number of rows for Q? So Q would be 1, 2, 3 rows. Okay, so we have 3 rows for that by the number of columns. So what are the number of columns? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. So it's going to be a 3 by 4. So therefore, our answer would be a 3 by 4 for the order of matrix Q. Now, determinant for P, what is that? So basically, how I like to remember this, I like to think of it as a crisscross. So 8 times 5 minus 6 times 7. So for the determinant, if you never saw the general expression before, it's usually written like this. So let's just say we had a matrix called M, which is equal to that. Its determinant, notice lines here that this one gave us as well too. So just in case you can't see it, this is it. It's gonna be A times D minus B times C. So that's why I call it the crisscross. So in this case here is 8 times 5, and it must be in that order, okay? So in this case for P, it's gonna be 8 times 5, must be in that order, minus 6 times 7. So 8 times 5 is 40, minus 6 times 7, which is 42. So we end up with 40 take away 42, which is negative 2. So then our answer would be this right. Alright, so for this particular question here now, 29, these are vectors. So if the vectors P and Q are 3 over 2 and negative 1 over 4, respectively, meaning in that order, so that means that here is P and this is Q. Then P minus 2Q, okay? So we need to figure out what that is. So P is 3, 2, and we are subtracting 2 times Q. So Q is negative 1, 4. So let's simplify this. So basically 2 will be multiplied to both of these. So it's going to be 2 times negative 1, which is negative 2. 2 times 4 is 8. So we bring this back. So we are going to have 3, 2. And we're subtracting this now. So you may ask, where did the 2 go? Basically, I multiply the 2 to each of these. So this is how I got this. 2 times negative 1, negative 2. 2 times 4, positive 8. So this one became a negative because 2 times negative 1 would give me this. So now I have 3 minus negative 2. Then 2 minus 8. So 3 take away negative 2. This is going to turn to a plus, which is going to give me 5. And then 2 minus 8 is minus 6. So answer is 5 minus 6. Alright, so for this particular question now, it says we have a parallelogram WXYZ. In the parallelogram, R is the midpoint of XY. So this is R here, the midpoint of XY. Based on the information above, Z to R. So we're going from Z to R. What is it? So if I want to go from Z to R, let's work out what that could be first. Z to R. Now, the fact that I use 2 sections, that means we're using the easiest route, which is Z to R, right? So think of it as Z going to R. How can I do that? I can either go Z to W, W to X, X to R. Now, I'm not going to do all of that. I'm going to go to the easiest way, which is Z to Y, then Y to R. Okay, whenever you're doing vectors questions, especially in like structured as well too, you want to do it the easiest way possible. You don't get extra marks for doing something the most complicated way. So Z to Y is ZY plus YR. So now when I look at this, what would this actually work out to be? So for instance, Z to Y is this way we were going, and then Y to R is this here. But the thing is, no, what is YR and what is ZY as it relates to this? No, this is a parallelogram, so that means Z to Y is the same as over here, which is W to X. So W to X is the same vector as Z to Y. So I can substitute Z to Y with W to X. So I could say, this is the same thing as WX. Alright, so for this part, YR. So the corresponding thing that they would have is maybe Z to, we don't have anything here that's halfway. So therefore, if we want to go for the equivalent of this, we have to consider half of this entire thing here, okay? Now they do it here in terms of W and Z. If you notice here, W and Z, W and Z, W and Z. So W to Z would have been going this way, but remember, we're not going that way. Okay, so this way would have been WZ, but we're not going in that direction. We're going the opposite, and we're going half of that. So if we're going opposite, we're going to change the sign, because this way would be negative WZ. If we're going this way, it would be negative WZ. But notice, where do we stop? We stop halfway. So half of negative WZ would represent this right here. So this little piece here, because we're going the opposite of this WZ, which they have here, it's going to be negative half of WZ. Okay, so because of that, we would say that I'll have half WZ, but the negative version of it. So we just need to see if we find this on this question now. And as you can see, A is our answer. So it says in order to get from Z to Y, we have to use W to X, which is the same as Z to Y. Notice that. And then after, to get to the R, is the same as saying half of this, and just a different sign. This was kind of a crazy question, but yes, this is how it is done. So it says here, which of the following statements is true about the perimeter of the square and the rectangle? So before I even look at anything down here, I just want to calculate the perimeter first. So remember, this is a square, so all sides are the same. The rectangle, opposite sides are the same. So shape A, what is the perimeter of shape A? So that's going to be 12 plus 12 plus 12 plus 12, which is equal to 12 plus 12, 24, 24 plus 12, 36, 36 plus 12, 48 meters. Now shape B, what would that be? So shape B is going to be 16 plus 9 plus 16 plus 9. Now I could work this out saying 16 plus 9 is what? What's 16 plus 9? That's 25. And 16 plus 9 again is 25. So therefore this one would be equal to 25 plus 25, which is 50. So we could see that for this here, the perimeter is more than A. So shape B is more than A. So let's see if we have anything that helps us with this. So it says perimeter A is equal to perimeter B. We know that's not true. Perimeter A is more than, that's what this means, more than perimeter B. So this is 48 and 50. Obviously that is not the case. Perimeter A is more than or equal to, so it's not this either, because it's basically the same concept, just that it's equal and they're not equal. And this one says perimeter A is less than perimeter of B. Is that true? Yes. So perimeter A is 48, which is less than P, which is B, which is 50. So our answer is, alright, so for this one, 3,800 millimeters to express in meters is, so in terms of milliliters, we would have to divide this by 1,000. We would have to divide this by 1,000. So if we divide 3,800 by 1,000, it's the same as saying 3.8. So in case you didn't know that, let's work it out from scratch. So 1 centimeter is equal to 10 millimeters. Now, if I wanted to figure out how many centimeters now are in a meter, so 1 meter is equal to 100 centimeters. So as you can see here, if I have 1 meter, which is 100 centimeters, if I want to convert this piece by piece, I can convert the 3,800 millimeters. So using this concept here, 3,800 millimeters, if I want to convert that to centimeters, I would divide it by 1,000. So therefore, 3,800 millimeters would be the same thing as 380 centimeters. Now again, if I want to convert this centimeters into meters, so basically 380 centimeters into meters, I would have to divide by 100. So go 1, 2. So my answer would be 3.8. Alright, so this is how I got this answer. So this next question here says the distance around the edge of a circular pond. So let's just say that we had a circular pond here. So this is a pond of water, which is a circle. So around this pond is 88 meters. So straight around this pond is 88 meters. Okay, so the distance from there to there is 88 meters. Okay, so 88 meters. Now the radius in meters is, we need to figure out an expression for the radius. So when we are usually representing the distance around a circle, or what we know it as the circumference, that is equal to 2 pi r. So in other words, the total distance around, or in our case 88, we can substitute the circumference for 88, which is equal to 2 times pi times r. So figure out expression for radius. We just divide both sides by 2 pi. So therefore we will be left with r is equal to 88 over 2 pi. So our answer would be this. Alright, so for this particular question here, we have what we call a composite shape. Now why is it a composite shape? Because we have two different shapes that come together to form one. So this is one shape, and this here is another shape. What we need to do is we need to work out the area of both of these, then add them up. So the first one I'm going to look at is this here, which is a square. So let's see what it is. I know it's a square because of that. So the area of this square, remember it's 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters, right? So the area for this particular one would be 5 times 5, which is equal to 25 centimeters squared. Now this one here is a triangle. Remember, the area of a triangle is half the base times the height. Now the base for this one is 5 because it shares the same base as the square. So here's 5 centimeters. Here's also 5 centimeters. So the base is 5 centimeters and the height is 4. The perpendicular height is 4 centimeters. So the area of this would be literally 5 times 4 divided by 2, which is equal to 20 over 2, which is equal to 10 centimeters squared. So the area would be equal to 25 plus 10, which is equal to 35 centimeters squared. So this is our answer right here. Alright, so for this particular one here, we said the volume in centimeters cube of a cube of edge 3 centimeters. So let's try to sketch our little cube here. So a cube would be the same size all around. So here would be 3 centimeters, here would be 3 centimeters, and also here would be 3 centimeters. So the volume of a cube would be equal to 3 times 3 times 3. How do I know that? The volume of a cube is length times width times height. So 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. So our answer would be 27 centimeters cubed, which is this right here. Now with this one here, the area of a rectangle is 53.6 centimeters squared. So let's say we have a rectangle who has an area of 53.6. So basically, if we look at this, right, remember the area of a rectangle is equal to length times width. Now if the length is multiplied by 4 and the width is halved, the area will then be, so we have a new rectangle basically. Okay, so let's break down what's happening here. So what is the new area for this? So the new area would be multiplied by 4 for the length, so that would be 4 times L, and the width is halved, so we're finding half of the width. So then when we look at this now, 4 can be multiplied by the half, and we could have the times length times width. All I'm doing is rearranging so I can have the numbers together. So when we do that now, 4 times half is basically saying 2, because basically half of 4 is 2. So we are saying the new area is 2 times the length and width of the old one. So this length and width represents this one, because that's what they told us. It's the length and width of the old one. So when we look at this here now, we could say that since this is the length and width, and we knew that the old area was 53.6, that must mean that the new area would be 2 multiplied by 53.6. So if we work that out, it's going to be 53.6 times 2. Are we doubling it? So in this case, this would work out to 6 plus 6 is 12. We put a 2 here, put a 1 here. 3 plus 3 is 6 plus 1, 7. 5 plus 5 is 10. So 107.2. So this here is our answer. Now the next question says, on leaving Trinidad, the time on a pilot's watch was 23 hours. When he arrived at his destination in the same time zone on the next day, his watch showed 3 hours. How many hours did the flight take? So 23 hours is like basically 11 o'clock. So this is 11, and then it went to 12, 1, 2, straight to 3 o'clock. So if we're checking the number of hours, from 11 to 12 would have been 1. Then this would have been 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. So it took 4 hours, because remember, 11 o'clock is the same as 23 hours, but in the night time. And 3 o'clock is 3 in the morning. So 11 in the night to 3 in the morning is 1, 2, 3, 4 hours. So our answer would be this. Alright, so for this one here, it says the area of the trapezium PQRS above is. Alright, so the area of a trapezium. Now the area of a trapezium can be represented as half multiplied by A plus B. Now what does A plus B represent? A plus B represents the parallel lines. And then we're multiplying it by the height. Now if you look at this, what are the parallel lines? Well, the parallel lines would be the 8 as well as the 18. And this height is not just any height. It's a perpendicular height to those parallel lines, or the distance between those two parallel lines at a perpendicular state. So therefore we could say that the area of this is half times 8 plus 18 multiplied by 5. So then that would give us half times 8 plus 18 is 26 multiplied by 5. So I could find out what's half of 26. So half of 26, or half times 26, is 13. Now 13 times 5, what is 13 times 5? 13 times 5 would give us 65 centimeters squared. So then this one here would be our answer. Now this question asks for our modal age. So when we're talking about modal, we're talking about the age that occurred the most. Now the highest age would go up to 5. So the modal age in this case went up to having 5 people. So there were 5 people who was this height, which was 7 years old. Therefore the modal age is 7 years old. So this part of the question asks how many children took part in the survey. So when looking at this, the first one is 3. So we have 3 children here. This one goes up to 4. This one goes up to 2. This one at the top goes to 5. And this one goes to 1. So then after we would have the total people, or total children, being 3 plus 4 plus 2 plus 5 plus 1. And that is going to equal to 15 children. So our answer is 15. Alright, so median. Now median. We find a median by looking for the number that falls within or the center of a set of numbers from lowest to highest. Now oftentimes it could be 2 numbers, or it could be 1 single number. So in this case, let's see. So if we cancel 1 from each end, then the next one, then the next one. So we cancel 3 on both sides. Now 4 on both sides. We are left with 2 in the middle. Therefore, these middle numbers here, we have to find the average of them in order to find the median. So that's going to be 6 plus 7 divided by 2. Now 6 plus 7 is equal to 13. And when we divide that by 2, we're going to get 6.5. So our answer here is 6.5. The next question asks, what is the probability that of randomly obtaining at least 2 heads? So we're looking at these 3 coins which are tossed simultaneously. The possible outcomes are heads, 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 tails, and so forth. The head represents H and tail will be represented by T. So we want to know the possibility of obtaining at least 2 heads. So what do we mean by obtaining at least 2? So think of it like this. If I told you to give someone at least $10, what would you think of? 10 is the minimum amount that you would give them. So it could go from 10 up to 11 and 12 and so forth. So when I say at least 2 heads, I'm talking about having either 2 heads or 3 heads. So we need to look for things that having 2 heads or 3 heads. So we got this here, boom, we got this here, we also have this here, we have this, and that's it. So we have 4 out of how many options? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 4 out of 8 options. Therefore, our probability is 4 out of 8, which could be reduced to 1 over 2. So therefore, answer is C. 1 over 2. So this says 600 students write an examination. The probability of randomly selected students failing the examination is 1 out of 5. How many students are expected to pass? So we have 600 students. 600 students. So how we could work this out first, we could figure out how many are expected to fail. And then if we could work that out and subtract it from this, we'll know how much we would expect to pass. So let's just do that then. So 1 over 5 times 600 over 1. So 5 into 5 goes 1. 5 into 600 goes 120 times. How did I know that? Well, 5 can go into 60 12 times. And I will be left back with that 0. So that's how I know it's 120. Therefore, the final answer for this would be 600 minus 120, which is equal to 480. So for this particular question, we need to work out the interquartile range. Interquartile range. Now the interquartile range, what is that? The interquartile range is the upper quartile minus the lower quartile. So we have to subtract these 2 quartiles in order to work out what the interquartile range is. So for instance, I want to see where the upper quartile would be. That's going to be where? It's going to be halfway between the middle spot, which is known as a median. So the median would be at this middle spot because we had how many people? 20 fish. So the 20 fish, the middle would fall somewhere by 10 and we would come somewhere down here, right? Now in order to find the upper quartile, I need to figure out what's in the middle of 10 and 20. So that's gonna be what? 15. If I come through here and hit this spot, let's zoom in so you can see. So as you can see here, we have the 15 coming straight to this point here and intersecting with this line. So we can draw it straight down. So it's at this point here. Now we're going from 3 to 4. Now if you're looking at the 3 to 4, each of these here represents 1. So it's going to be like 1 in the sense of 3.1. So this is 3, 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4. Here is 3.5. So if this is 3.5, here is 3.6, and here now is 3.7. Our upper quartile is equal to 3.7. Now the next one we have to do is the lower quartile, which is in the center of the 0 and a 10, which is at 5. So we do the same concept. It intersects right here. So we come down. Then we'll have 1, 1.1, 1.2. So right here is 1.2. So the lower quartile is 1.2. So therefore for this, we can say 3.7 minus the lower quartile, which is 1.2. So 3.7 minus 1.2, would give us 7 take away 2 is 5. 1 minus that would give us 2, so it's going to be 2.5. So when we look here, we have the answer right here, 2.5. So it says here, which of the following diagrams best illustrates a function? So function can be one of 2 things, right? We can either have a 1-to-1 or a many-to-1. Either case, it's always something going to 1. So 1-to-1 or many-to-1. So I'm looking at this here. We have 1 going to 2, which would consider this to be 1 going to many. So it's definitely not this. Now, if you look at this here, we have the same concept again. 1 is going to multiple options. So from the left reading to right, what is it going to? 1 is going to many. So it can't be this either. Now with this one here, what do we have? We have 2 going to this. So because these two are going to this, it says many to 1. However, the problem is this here, because now this makes it look like this 1 point here is 1 going to many. So now this would be a case of many to many. So we know that's not the answer. Now if you look at this here, we have individual circles going to individual circles. So it's like 1 to 1. No one here is copying anyone from here, so it's 1 to 1. So our answer is this, which is indeed a function. Our other option would have been if we had a many to 1, but in this case they provided us with a 1 to 1. All right, so 46. Now 46. Now I know from this that the gradient is 4. We want to figure out the equation of the line, which usually is in the form y equal mx plus c. Now m is 4, which is a gradient. M stands for gradient. This here is a gradient, and this c is a y-intercept. So y therefore is equal to 4x, and the y-intercept I know is 5. Why is it 5? Plus 5. How do I know it's 5? Well, basically, if we have a graph, say here was 5, the coordinate for here is 0, 5, because we're right under this point. Here would be 0, 5. So that tells me that whatever has 0 as x, that particular part makes the value for y the intercept. So anything with a coordinate 0 then something, that is definitely crossing the y-axis at whatever value is here, which is 5. So the answer would be y is equal to 4x for the gradient, this for the y-intercept for this. Now if you wanted to calculate that using mathematics, you could have said that y is equal to 4x plus c. We know it's 4 because it's stated that the gradient is 4. Now we need to see what the y-intercept is. So we have a coordinate 0, 5. So the 0 can represent x, the 5 can represent y. Now if I replace this y with 5 and equal that to 4 multiplied by x, which is in this case 0, plus c. So 4 times 0 is 0. 5 is equal to 0 plus c. Therefore, this is equal to c. So I know the y-intercept is c. I can rewrite the equation to be 4x plus 5. And that is your answer. So let's look at this one now. It says the graph of the inequality in the diagram is defined by, so as you can see, it's going from 1 and it's then going down. But the important thing is that this circle here is not shaded. It's just an open circle. So because it's an open circle, that means it would not include the equal part. Now the part that has equal on it, this is usually when we have a colored circle, but in this case we don't. So because it's open, we definitely know it can be this. But it says that this is going in this direction, which is values that are less than 1. So we know because of this, our answer is x is less than 1. And just in case you can't see this circle properly, as you can see here, it's an open circle. All right, so this particular question wants us to find the gradient. So the gradient of AB. So let's get the coordinates of AB. So here would be 6, 3, and here would be 2, 1. So the gradient of a line is also known as y2 take away y1 over x2 take away x1. Now, what I have to do is label these. So I'm going to label this x1, y1, and call this x2, y2. So in that case, I'll have 3, which is y2, minus 1, which is y1, over x2, which is 6, minus x1, which is 2. So 3 minus 1 is 2 over 6 minus 2, which is 4. This is the same thing as having a half, because this can be reduced to a half. The next way we could do it is basically trying to figure out the rise and the run. So rise is how it goes up and down, and across is a run. So this is a run here. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. So the run here is equal to 4, and we could also say that the rise is 1, 2. So the rise is equal to 2. So rise over run, which is equal to 2 over 4. So that's the same thing as a half. So that's just a different way. All right, so for this one here, we have a function. So we have a function. This function fx is equal to 2x squared minus 1. So we have the input -3. So technically this x represents -3. Therefore, everywhere we see x, we have to replace it with -3. So in that case, we would have 2 multiplied by -3. So I'm replacing this x with -3. This just means multiply. So in fact, we don't even need to have that there. So that 2 just means that we are multiplying it to this right here. And then we're gonna subtract 1. So that's gonna be 2 times negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. That's what negative 3 squared means. Negative 3 multiplied by negative 3. And then we're going to take away 1 from that. So 2 times 9 is 18 minus 1 is 17. Therefore, our answer is 17. So this here asks for the maximum point of y equal 4x minus x squared. So if we are looking at this graph, this here represents a graph, this curve that you see here. Now if you look at that, we just hit our maximum point, which is right up here. So that's going to be what? 2 on the x, and then on the y-axis, it's going to match with 4. So 2, 4 is our answer. 50 is 2, 4. What is the gradient of the straight line 2y equal negative 3x minus 8? So in order to figure that out, I need to put this in the form y equal mx plus c. Now whenever equation is in the form y equal mx plus c, the m represents the gradient and the c obviously the y-intercept, like we discussed earlier. Now the thing is, if it's not in this form, we cannot say that m is a gradient. We have to get m, on this side, y by itself as a subject of the formula. So in that case, we have 2y is equal to negative 3x minus 8. Now to get the y by itself, we have to divide both sides by 2. So we divide both sides by 2, so that would leave us with this, which is y is equal to negative 3x minus 8. And it's like we are putting each of these over 2. So if you look at this part here, negative 3 over 2, that here represents what? The m. So the mx plus c, this m represents negative 3 over 2. So therefore our gradient is negative 3 over 2. So for this one, we know that the exterior angle of a regular polygon is 60 degrees. Then the polygon is, well, first of all, we know it can't be a quadrilateral because the exterior angles of a quadrilateral would be 90 degrees. Definitely can't be a triangle because we know the exterior ones for a regular one would be 120. So it won't be that. So we have to figure out of pentagon and hexagon. So there's actually a formula that we can use for this. It usually tells us that the external angle of a regular polygon. So a regular polygon just means that all the sides are the same. So this here is equal to 360 degrees divided by the total number of sides that it has. So 360 divided by, let's say the number of sides was n. So in this case, they're saying 360 divided by n gives us 60 degrees. So how can we figure out what that is? So it's the same thing as dividing 360 by 60. So 360 divided by 60 gives us 6. Okay, so that means that the number of sides it has is 6. So in this case, that would be a hexagon, which has 6 sides. And if we was to draw the base of a hexagon, we know that this side, what we're saying is 60 degrees. Here is also 60 degrees. And we could keep building it like that and keep adding, and we'll have 60 degrees. Okay, so we expect the same at the top as well too. 60 degrees here, 60 degrees here, and then also on this side we would have 60 degrees here, and so forth and so on. Now this one says in the diagram AB and CD are parallel. Okay, so if they are parallel, that means that these two sides here are the same. So that means this is that. Okay, so all these angles here that I'm going to show you now are the same. So this is the same size as this, which is the same side as this. Alright, so this question says in the triangle, the value of x is. So we are trying to figure out what the value of x is. So in this case, we have 30, 30 on both sides. And we know that the internal angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So if we add these up together, so we could say, I even put degrees here, but as we would say, 30 plus 30 is equal to 60. So 60 degrees here. Now, if we want to figure out what the missing angle is, all we have to say is 180 minus this 60, which would give us 120 degrees. So the answer is 120 degrees. And if we add that back up, we'll have 120 plus 30, which is equal to 180 degrees. All right. Next one here, it says the image of a point P, -2, 3 under translation 3 to 4. So if we want to have a translation for P, all we need to do is add the translation to it and we'll get the answer. So this here would be -2, 3, and we're adding that to 3, 4. So -2 plus 3 is actually equal to 1, and 3 plus 4 is equal to 7. So therefore, it will be 1 7. So this here is answer 1, 7. Now I can also plot it for you so you could see what it looks like. So let's say we have negative 2 here. Here was negative 1. And we go up 1, 2, 3. And then after we go across here, 1, 2, 3. So based on our answer, we're going to need a higher value. So 4, 5, 6, 7. So it says this is the original point, negative 2, 3, which would be negative 2, 3 right here. This is where it matches. So it says we have to go to the right 3 times. So that would be over this negative 2, to go over the negative 1, to go over the 0, to then go over the 1 again. So that's 3 to the right, and then we have to go 4 up. So that would be from this 3 up, 1, 2, 3, 4. So notice where we end up right here. So that's in line with 1 and 7. The answer is 1, 7. So with this here, we can see that we have a transformation to talk about. So if you're looking at this, we know for sure that this has to be a reflection, but not just any reflection, in the y-axis. Notice how these are the same distance apart from the same area. So then we have this here being the mirror line, which is what? The y-axis. So we say it's a reflection in the y-axis. So for this one, it says if the area of ABC is 20, so this is ABC, the area of this here is 20 centimeters squared. What is the area of MNO? So how this generally works is that this would be 20 divided by 4, because usually the area, once you double, as you can see, this doubles. So it was 6 and 3. So this 3, you could think of it as doubling to the 6. Once you double, the area would be 2 to the power of 2. So 2 just recognizing whatever the size or factor that you did it by. So in this case, if you did it by 2, that means it would be a difference of 4 in terms of a multiple. So if this is 20 centimeters squared, that means this one over here would be 20 divided by 4. So therefore the area would be 5 centimeters squared. So just to prove the concept to you, let me see if I draw a triangle that actually has an area 20 centimeters squared. I want to say that from here to here is 10 centimeters, and let's say the height from here to here is 4 centimeters. And no, it's not proportional, but just let's work with it for now. So if I was to drop the size of that by half, so this here would be 5 centimeters and this would be 2 centimeters. Now if I wanted to find the area of this, it would be 10 times 4 divided by 2. So what's 10 times 4? That's 40 divided by 2. That's going to give me 20 centimeters squared. Now the same concept here. We would say 5 times 2 and then we divide that by 2. So what's 5 times 2? 5 times 2 is 10. We divide 10 by 2 and we get 5 centimeters squared. So if the area is 20, we know that this would be 5 centimeters squared. So likewise, if we had one that was, say, 3 times the size, we would have ended up saying the factor was 3 squared. If it was 4 times, we would have said 4 squared, whatever the case is, specifically for triangle. Alright, so this one wants to know the scale factor of enlargement. So it says we're going from ABC is mapped onto A prime, B prime, C prime by an enlargement. What is the scale factor of the enlargement? So we're going from here to here. So this here is 1 box, so 1 unit. And then here to here is 2 units. Okay, so that means we double. So the scale factor doubled from 1 to 2. So the scale factor is C. If we looked at it from the other side, so this here is 2 units. 2 units up here. And then for this one, it goes up 4 units. Okay, so 4. So that means it double again from this perspective. Alright, so this particular one here, it says the diagram above, not drawn to scale, shows that the angle of depression of a point X from Z is 30 degrees. So if this is 30 degrees, I know that also here would be 30 degrees. And that's because these 2 lines here parallel. How do I know this is parallel to this? Well, it said it's the angle of depression, and the angle of depression comes from the horizontal, which is this line here. So it says if X is 10 meters to Y, right? The height of YZ. So we need to figure out what's the height of YZ. So since we're looking at this angle, this here is opposite the angle. So this represents O. We know that a line opposite the right angle is a hypotenuse. Therefore, we are left with A here. So we have the O and the A. So therefore, that would means what would we use? So if we have SO H for SOHCAHTOA, we have these three concepts: sine, cosine, and tangent. So we need to figure out these pairs, which ones match with O and A. So it's obviously tan. So tan matches with O and A. So that means we're using tan angle is equal to opposite over adjacent. So this angle is 30. So we say tan 30 is equal to O, which is this, over A, which is 10. So now we could write tan 30 as a fraction, which is putting it over 1, because I want to make this O here the subject of the formula. So what I need to do is cross multiply. So O times 1 is O, which is equal to tan 30 times 10, which is 10 tan 30. So then answer for this would be the length that we're looking for YZ. Therefore, our angle is A. So continue to work hard on these questions. The thing is, when it comes to maths, you have to practice. You got to practice. The more you practice, the better you get. I like to think of the practicing as if you had like years of experience. So every time you practice a paper, you increase a year of experience. So think of it this way. If you had a baby who's just 1 year old and you compare that to someone who's 20-year-old, right? If you have a baby who is 1 year old and you compare that to somebody who is 20 years old who's going to do a maths exam for you, you'd hope that a 20-year-old has enough knowledge to be able to help you prepare for your maths examination. Why? Because of the years of experience. Why is that important? That is important because if you're answering one paper alone, that's like you're that little child trying to go and do an exam. But if you keep doing more and more papers and you get to do 20 papers, the more papers you do, the more experience you're getting. And the more experience you're getting from this exposure, the more confident you should feel and should be in the examination. So don't be scared of the practice. Don't be scared of staying on top of the things. Make as much as you can out of this opportunity while it lasts. Make this your best and most effective shot at passing this exam. So all the best. Hope you enjoy. Hope you learn something. All the best in whatever you do. All the best in the exam. Peace. This ain't no play man thing. Peace. This ain't no play man thing.